Have you ever noticed the strange irony of our time? That we are surrounded by technology powerful enough to connect minds across continents, yet more people than ever feel isolated and unseen? That we can simulate galaxies on a computer screen, but we can't seem to find inner peace in our own minds? That we've decoded the genome, mapped the cosmic microwave background, and engineered machines to mimic human thought, yet many wake each day to a dull sense of disconnection, as if the gears of life turn without them? This is not merely a psychological phenomenon, it is a philosophical riddle, a cosmic question wrapped in the mundane texture of everyday life. Why do so many human beings living in the most advanced civilization our species has ever constructed feel trapped, drained, and disempowered? It's as if we are actors on a stage only. The script was written long before we were born, a script filled with assumptions we never questioned, a worldview inherited, not chosen, a matrix, if you will, not of machines, but of ideas, of constructs so embedded in our cultural software that we mistake them for truth itself. This is not the matrix of sci-fi. This is the matrix of economic systems, social conditioning, educational tracks, media loops, and the illusion of choice in a hyper-optimized, consumption-driven reality. And like any well-designed illusion, it doesn't need to hide you in darkness. It simply needs to keep you comfortable enough not to ask what lies beyond. What if the bars of your prison are made not of steel, but of beliefs? Let us examine this through the lens of science. The observable universe is a vast, expanding sea of energy, matter, and information 13.8 billion years in the making. Galaxies collide, stars explode, planets form, and consciousness arises. And here, you area being of carbon, calcium, water, and understanding on a rock that spins through space at 10 miles per hour, orbiting a thermonuclear furnace that gives life to everything you know. Yet for many, the experience of life has been reduced to a narrow corridor. Wake up, work, consume, repeat, all while the cosmos unfurls its splendor beyond our attention. How did we get here? And more importantly, how do we get out? That is the question this speech will explore. Not through mysticism, but through reality. Not through fantasy, but through facts. Because the truth is more liberating than fiction if only we have the courage to confront it. You see, in astrophysics, we study how the fabric of space-time can be bent by mass and energy. But on Earth, there's another kind of bending subtler, quieter. It's not the warping of space, but the warping of thought, the reshaping of perception. And perhaps the most deceptive force in our lives isn't gravity, but conditioning. From the moment we're born, we are taught what to value, what to fear, what success looks like, what failure means. We are handed a template before we ever form a question. We learn to measure our worth not by who we are, but by how closely we match a mold. But who made the mold? And why does it fit so poorly on the human soul? In science, we admire falsifiability, the idea that a theory must be testable, challengeable, vulnerable to being proven wrong. Yet in society, many of the beliefs we hold most sacred about work, wealth, race, status, even Timar, are not questioned at all. They are treated not as hypotheses, but commandments. Take, for instance, the economic narrative. We're told, get good grades, get a job, earn a wage, buy a home, retire, and then maybe enjoy freedom. This is sold as security, but is it just delayed permission to live? The fiat currency we toil for every day is not backed by anything tangible. It's a consensus, a story, a belief system enforced by centralized power, yet vulnerable to inflation, manipulation, and collapse. It is not wealth, it is a placeholder, a symbol. And when symbols replace substance, civilizations drift from reality. In the cosmos, entropy is inevitable. But here, stagnation is often engineered. Why? Because a distracted, anxious, and dependent population is easier to manage than one that is sovereign, curious, and critically aware. What do we call it when a system feeds on your attention, capitalizes on your insecurity, and defines your self-worth by comparison to others? In the digital world, we call that an algorithm. In the human world, we call it culture. And this culture, like a black hole, can bend the very light of truth. Let's talk about time. We think of it as a straight arrow past, present, future. But physics shows us it's more malleable than that. Time dilates near massive objects. It stretches and slows. But what about psychological time? How much of your life is actually lived? Truly lived? How much slips away unnoticed because your mind is stuck in a loop of anxiety about the future or regrets about the past? In that sense, The Matrix is not a movie. It is a moment, a mindset, a sleepwalk in daylight. The irony is that we celebrate intelligence, artificial or otherwise, but ignore consciousness. And while we marvel at machines that mimic our cognition, we neglect the miracle that is awareness itself. A robot can pass a Turing test, but can it feel awe, wonder? Can it look at the stars and question its place in the universe? You can. And that ability alone makes you not a cog in a system, but a cosmic phenomenon capable of awakening. So let's trace this matrix further into education. Consider, what does it mean to be educated? Is it the ability to recite facts, pass tests, follow rules? Or is it the capacity to question, to imagine, to synthesize? We take young minds filled with curiosity and natural wonder about the world and place them in rows. We reward obedience over originality. We prepare them for jobs that may not exist and teach them little about how to think critically, how to feel deeply, how to live meaningfully. This is not an accident. It is a system functioning exactly as designed to produce workers, not questioners, consumers, not creators, followers, not free thinkers. And like all systems designed without soul, it eventually decays into irrelevance. Yet the universe is not a machine. It is a living, evolving mystery, and so are you. Look around, observe the signs. The sense of restlessness you feel is not a malfunction, it's your humanity reasserting itself. The boredom, the existential dread, the yearning for something more, they are not problems to medicate away. They are symptoms of your inner cosmos pushing against the walls of a synthetic one. This is what philosophers call the examined life, what astronomers call the overview effect, the cognitive shift astronauts report when seeing Earth from orbit, a sense that borders, dogmas, and systems are artificial, that we are one species on one planet in one fragile sliver of space and time. And yet, though we choose to live, matters. When you recognize the matrix for what it is, not a conspiracy of shadowy figures, but a consensus of unexamined beliefs, you are already halfway to freedom. Because the real prison is the one you cannot see. And the first step out is awareness. Let's now examine one of the most persistent illusions maintained by the matrix, the illusion of separation. In biology, we know that no organism exists in isolation. A tree does not grow alone. It is embedded in a mycorrhizal network, exchanging nutrients and information with fungi beneath the soil. A human body is not a self-contained unit. It is a symbiosis of human cells and trillions of microbial life forms. Even your breath is not yours alone. It is the same oxygen once exhaled by trees, whales, and perhaps the dinosaurs. Yet society teaches us to think of ourselves as separate units, separate from each other, separate from nature, separate from the cosmos. This fragmented worldview is perhaps the greatest deception of all. Because once you believe you are isolated, you become easier to manipulate. You become dependent on external approval, validation, and material proof of your worth. In astrophysics, we often use the term event horizon, the boundary around a black hole, beyond which no information can escape. But I sometimes wonder, how many people live behind their own psychological event horizon? How many have let fear, shame, and cultural conditioning compress their sense of possibility into a singularity of silence? You might call it a normal life, but normal is not always natural. Normal is often just familiar dysfunction codified and commercialized. And what is media if not the mouthpiece of the matrix? It frames our reality, curates our fears, edits our heroes, and loops narratives that serve power more than truth. It sells outrage as engagement. It replaces nuanced discourse with emotional reflex. It tells us what to fear, who to trust, and when to look away. When every screen you own is designed to hijack your attention, you're not the customer, you're the product. Your focus is the currency. Your emotional triggers are the investment. And your data, your digital shadow is the most valuable export you never consented to sell. But here's the twist. While machines can simulate intelligence, only a conscious being can choose what to pay attention to. Attention then becomes a sacred act, an act of rebellion, an act of sovereignty. So the next time you're scrolling through headlines engineered to agitate rather than illuminate, ask yourself, who benefits from my outrage? Who profits from my disempowerment? If the matrix can't chain your body, it will aim to chain your mind. And what of work, of careers? The matrix doesn't only want you to comply, it wants you to equate your worth with your productivity, to forget that you are a being, not merely a doing, that your value is not measured in efficiency, deadlines, or KPIs, but in your capacity to wonder, to feel, to imagine. We are taught to chase promotions more than purpose, titles more than truth, but the laws of the universe do not recognize your LinkedIn profile. Stars do not care what your business card says. Galaxies are indifferent to your resume. What matters is not what you do, but how aligned your actions are with your nature. Ask yourself, do I wake with dread or delight? Do I work to survive, or do I live to contribute something meaningful? If the former, then you're not lazy or broken, you're likely just misaligned. Because the most efficient machine in the world still produces noise if it's operating out of tune. In the natural world, ecosystems seek harmony. In the matrix, systems seek compliance. But harmony doesn't require permission, it requires awareness. And once you see the cage, you begin to hear the music that was always playing outside it. Let's not forget the role of language. Language is not just a communication tool. It is a frame for reality. The words we use shape the concepts we can conceive. When we call someone illegal, we erase their humanity. When we call endless consumption growth, we ignore its cost to the biosphere. When we label every deviation from the norm a disorder, we pathologize uniqueness. Words can free, but they can also blind. The matrix thrives on language that narrows, flattens, commodifies. But the universe itself is not binary. It is probabilistic, quantum, fluid, unfinished. So too is your identity. So if you've ever felt like you don't belong, like you're a misfit in a world that values noise over depth, don't despair. It's not that there's something wrong with you, it's that your awareness is too wide to be boxed in. You are not broken, you are breaking through. There's a reason stargazing makes us feel both small and infinite. It's because in that moment, we remember we are not above nature, we are not beneath it, we are of it. Stardust, dreaming of stars. And that brings us to the final deception of the matrix, the lie of powerlessness. In physics, we learn that even the smallest particle exerts influence. A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and a storm forms in Texas. Quantum fields fluctuate, and particles pop into existence. Reality is not status, it is emergent, participatory, unfolding based on the information it receives. You are not an observer. You are a participant, a node in the grand unfolding of space-time. Your thoughts, choices, and actions ripple outward often in ways you cannot predict. If that sounds poetic, it's because the universe itself is poetic. It doesn't rhyme with our expectations. It surprises, it adapts, and it calls us again and again to wake up and take part in its evolution. So, what are the signs that you're enslaved by the matrix? You live by default instead of by design. You confuse busy with important. You trade authenticity for approval. You seek comfort over growth. You believe peace is something the world gives you rather than something you create. You forget that the universe is not something out there, but something in here reflected in the synapses of your brain and the beat of your heart. But the good news, the truly empowering, liberating, scientifically verifiable news is that awareness changes everything. Conscious observation collapses the wave function, measurement alters reality, and so too can your attention, your choices, your questions. There's a moment in every journey, scientific, personal, or civilizational, when the old model no longer explains the new data. In science, we call this a paradigm shift. In history, we call it a revolution. In the soul, we call it awakening. What if you are not here to conform to the system, but to question it? Not to survive within the matrix, but to evolve beyond it? The cosmos teaches us that transformation is not only possible, it is inevitable. Stars are born in chaos, not comfort. Galaxies swirl in graceful violence. The elements in your bones were forged in the death of ancient suns. You are literally made of change, and yet so often we resist it, clinging to the familiar, the routine, the pre-approved narrative of how life is supposed to go. But what if the system that promised stability was the very thing eroding your vitality? What if the safety it offered came at the cost of your sovereignty? We've built a civilization that can split atoms, simulate consciousness, and photograph black holes, but cannot seem to prioritize human fulfillment. We have smart cities filled with lonely people, infinite content and shrinking attention spans, political freedom without psychological liberation. This, my friend, is not evolution, it is sedation with style. So, how do you know when you're waking up? What are the signs that you're pulling away from the matrix's grip? You begin to question the unquestionable. You feel a growing tension between what the world asks of you and what your soul knows to be true. You stop mistaking noise for news and validation for value. You become more interested in what is real than what is popular. You might feel isolated at first, like a particle ejected from a system. But remember, in physics, that's how energy moves from entropy toward structure, from randomness toward resonance. You stop outsourcing your truth to algorithms. You stop feeding your consciousness with the junk food of fear and division. You begin to ask dangerous questions, the kind that can't be answered in sound bites or slogans. Who am I, really? Why am I here? What does it mean to live a life of integrity in a world built on illusion? And more importantly, what will I do now that I've seen through it? The Matrix wants your time, your attention, your unquestioning compliance, but it can't own your will unless you give it away. There is no single red pill. There is no rescue coming from outside. The truth is quieter than that. It dawns slowly, like light seeping into a dark room. You begin to see the patterns, the manipulation, the projection, the subtle theft of meaning disguised as convenience. And then if you dare, you begin to act differently. You choose to slow down in a world that worships speed. You choose to create when consumption is the default. You choose to listen deeply in a world that rewards shouting. You choose to honor your inner cosmos as much as you honor the outer one. Because the greatest revolution is not overthrowing government sit, is overthrowing inner tyranny. The tyranny of fear, of inertia, of smallness. You don't need permission to wake up. You never did. You just need a moment of clarity. And maybe this is that moment. So if you're still here, still listening, still feeling the stir of something ancient within, you know this. You are not alone. Millions are waking up, quietly, steadily, beautifully. Not to a new ideology, but to the truth of their own aliveness. The Matrix is clever, but it is not the cosmos. The Matrix is finite, but you are not. The Matrix is an operating system. You are a universe pretending to be a person for a little while. So remember, you are not broken, you are breaking free. You are not late, you are right on time. And this isn't the end of the world, it's the end of a version of it. One built on separation, fear, and hierarchy, and the beginning of something else, something more elegant, more humane, more aligned with the physics of truth. The universe is not a machine, it is a song, a spiral, a story still being written. And you, yes, you are a co-author, so write boldly, live awake. Speak truth and never again mistake the matrix for reality. Because now you know the signs were there all along. You just had to remember how to see